There is a house on a quiet street outside Atlanta. 3 bedrooms, a garage that does not quite fit 2 cars, a maple tree in the front yard that was planted when the house was built. It was finished in 1994. Since then, it has had 4 owners. The first was a family. The second was a family. The third was a family. The fourth one has never seen it. The fourth one is not a person at all, and the name on the deed today is 3 letters long. This is Policy Unpacked. Today we are going to do something simple, and it is going to take the whole episode. We are going to find out who owns that house. Scope first, the way this channel always starts. This is about single-family rental housing in the United States, traced through public records, county deeds, securities filings, one federal enforcement action. Nothing here is leaked and nothing here is secret. The house is a composite. It is built from patterns that appear over and over in real records. But the street is invented and so are the families. No real address, no real tenant. The numbers, on the other hand, are real, and every one of them is dated. If you watched last season, you know the habit. We did not ask whether you were covered. We asked where the coverage stopped, because that is the question the answer actually lives in. Same habit, new page. Do not ask who your landlord is. Ask who your landlord answers to. So, the deed. Every time a property in the United States changes hands, somebody records that change at the county. The office is usually called the Recorder of Deeds, and the record is public. You can look up the house you are sitting in right now. Most counties have put this online. Our house has 4 entries. 1994, a couple who bought it new. 2003, a second family. 2011, a third. Look at those first 3 lines for a second. Each one is a name. A first name, a last name, sometimes 2 of each, because a married couple bought together. If you had a problem with the roof in 2005, you knew exactly whose door to knock on. And then 2019. The buyer on that 4th line is not a name you could say out loud at a dinner party. It is 3 capital letters, a space, and the letters LLC. So who is that? Most people stop at this line, and if you stop there, stopping would be completely reasonable. The deed has told you what a deed is designed to tell you. Somebody owns this. Ownership is recorded. The system worked. But an LLC is not a person, and it is not really a company in the way you are picturing. It is a container. It holds assets and it holds liability, and it can be created in an afternoon. In Delaware, there is a version called a Series LLC. One filing creates a parent, and the parent can spin off separate series underneath it. Each series carries its own debts, its own obligations, its own liabilities, walled off from the others. Which means a company holding 4,000 houses does not have to appear on 4,000 deeds. It can appear on none of them. And I want to be careful here because there is a version of this story that gets told badly. The container is not the trick. Small landlords use these too, for ordinary reasons. The interesting part is not that the container exists, it is what happens to information when you stack enough of them. To get past the letters, you need a second document, and it comes from somewhere else entirely, not the county, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Because if the entity holding those houses is owned by a company that sells shares to the public, that company has to file annually, quarterly, in detail. And those filings count things. A real number from a real filing. As of the 4th quarter of 2025, one company, Invitation Homes, reported owning 97,036 single-family rental homes. 86,000 of those held directly, another 7,800 through joint ventures. 97,000 houses, each one with a front door, a mailbox, and somebody's kitchen table inside it. Try holding that number in your head for a moment, because it resists it. 97,000 houses is a city, not a neighborhood, not a development. A city roughly the size of Boulder, Colorado, except the houses are not next to each other. They are scattered across the southern United States, 1 on this street, 2 on that one, and none of them with a sign out front. And who owns that company? This is the part where the story usually goes wrong, so let us go slowly. Invitation Homes was created in 2012 during the housing crash by the private equity firm Blackstone. It went public in 2017, and Blackstone sold its last shares in 2019. So if you have heard someone say that Blackstone owns American rental houses, that was true once and it is not true now, which is exactly the problem this episode is about. The chain moves. By the time a fact about it reaches you, the chain has already changed shape. Today, the owner is a real estate investment trust listed on a public exchange, which means the answer to who owns those 97,000 houses is technically shareholders. Pension funds, index funds. Possibly, if you have a retirement account in the United States, a very small slice of you. That is a strange sentence, and I am going to come back to it because it changes what kind of story this is. Now, we are about halfway through, and this is the point where I have to tell you the thing that makes this subject hard to talk about honestly. Everything I have just described is legal. Forming the LLC is legal. Recording the deed in its name is legal. Holding thousands of houses across hundreds of entities is legal. Selling shares in the company that controls them is legal and heavily regulated and disclosed in public filings that anyone can read. There is no hidden room. There is no forged document. Every step in this chain was taken in daylight on a form with a filing fee. And that is the actual finding. Not that somebody broke a rule that nobody had to. Because the chain does something without anybody intending it. The family in 1994 knew their neighbors owned their houses. The family in 2003 could knock on a landlord's door. The tenant today can look up the deed, find 3 letters, search those 3 letters, find a registered agent in Delaware, and stop. Not because the information is hidden, because it is scattered across 3 separate public systems that were never designed to be read together. The county knows about the deed. The state knows about the entity. The SEC knows about the company. None of them knows about the other 2. The tenant is not blocked. The tenant is just outnumbered by paperwork. Picture what that looks like on an ordinary Tuesday. A water heater fails. The tenant calls the number on the lease and reaches a maintenance queue, which is a real company doing a real job. A technician comes out. The heater gets replaced. Nothing went wrong there. That is the point I keep circling. The system delivered a working water heater. But now change one detail. Instead of a water heater, it is a dispute. A charge on the account the tenant does not recognize, and a phone queue that resolves it by explaining the charge rather than removing it. Ask yourself who you escalate that to, and you will find the chain does something a person never does. It absorbs the question. And I want to be fair about the other direction too, because there is one. The Government Accountability Office reviewed 74 studies on this in 2024 and have found that institutional investors may have helped stabilize some neighborhoods after the financial crash. Houses that were sitting empty got occupied. That happened, and leaving it out would make this a worse episode. So if almost all of it is legal, what happens at the edge, where it stops being legal? We have one clear answer to that, and it is worth walking through, because it is the only place in this episode where I can point at a document and say, a regulator said this crossed a line. In September 2024, the Federal Trade Commission brought an action against Invitation Homes. The allegations were about fees. The commission said the company advertised 1 monthly rent and then added mandatory charges that renters did not see until they received the lease. Sometimes, according to the complaint, not until after they had signed it. Smart home technology, air filter delivery, charges that were not optional. The commission put the figure at up to $1,700 a year, on top of the advertised rent. There were 2 other allegations, and the second one is the one people find hardest to hear. The first was security deposits. The complaint said the company withheld money for ordinary wear and tear. and in some cases, for damage that already existed before the tenant moved in. The second was evictions. The commission alleged the company filed eviction proceedings against renters it knew had already moved out. In one described instance, a renter was told no eviction would be filed if she left. She left. It was filed. It was filed. The company agreed to pay $48 million. In March of this year, the commission reported sending more than $47.2 million in checks to affected renters. Now, precision matters here, and I am going to be precise. That was a settlement, not a verdict. A settlement resolves a case without a court ruling that the conduct occurred. It describes one company in one period from 2021 to 2023. It is not a description of an industry, but it does tell you something structural. Notice what the case was about, not the ownership chain. The chain was never the problem. It was about what the tenant could and could not see before signing. Let us zoom out, and this is where the numbers do something I did not expect when I started reading them. I am going to give you the national figure first, and I want to warn you in advance that it is going to make this entire episode sound like an overreaction. Sit with that for about 90 seconds. Nationally, institutional investors own roughly 2% of single-family rental housing in the United States. 2%. That is smaller than the conversation around this subject would suggest, and if I stopped there, you would reasonably conclude this whole thing is overblown. So here is the number that changes it. In metropolitan Atlanta, that figure is not 2%. Depending on which source you use, it is 25 or 30%. Around 72,000 houses in one metro area, more than twice the next region on the list, which is Phoenix. And in some specific Atlanta suburbs, researchers have put corporate ownership above 70%. Why are there two different numbers, 25 and 30? Because there is no agreed definition of institutional investor. The GAO said so directly. One study counts anyone owning 100 houses. Another sets the line at 1,000. Different lines, different totals, same underlying reality. I am telling you that rather than picking the bigger number, because the gap between those two figures is itself the finding. This is a market we are measuring with a ruler nobody agrees on. And there is a version of this that you only see standing on the street. Imagine a cul-de-sac of 14 houses. Nationally, 2% would mean this street has none. In parts of that Atlanta metro, 10 of the 14 have an entity on the deed, and the families in them have no particular reason to discuss it with each other, so nobody on that street knows it is 10. Each household sees one house. The pattern only exists on paper, and the paper is at the county. And this is the same shape we found in Season 1, on a completely different subject. A large headline number and a smaller local one underneath it doing the actual work. 2% is true nationally, and it is nearly meaningless to the person renting in a Georgia suburb where the real figure is 30 times that. Averages are where local concentration goes to hide. Whether any of this touches you depends entirely on which street you are standing on. So what do you actually do with this? This part you can do tonight, and it takes about 15 minutes. 1. Find your county's property records site and search your address. You are looking for the grantee on the most recent deed. That is the current owner of record. If it is a person, you are done, and that is a real answer. 2. If it is an entity, take that exact name to the business registry in the state where it was formed. That is usually printed right there in the name, and very often the state is Delaware. You are looking for two things: the registered agent and the formation date. 3. If the formation date is close to the purchase date on the deed, that entity was very likely created for this specific transaction. That single fact tells you what kind of owner you have without knowing their name. And if you want the layer above that, search the entity name plus the phrase Securities and Exchange Commission. If a public company is behind it, the filings are free and they are searchable. None of this is adversarial. You are not filing anything or accusing anyone. You are reading records that were made public on purpose, and you may well find a person at the end of it. Most rented homes in this country are still owned by individuals, and if that is what your deed says, then you now know something concrete about where you live rather than something vague about a market. Either answer is worth 15 minutes of your evening. The point was never to find a villain in your paperwork. The point was that you should be able to find out. So who owns the house outside Atlanta? The honest answer is that the question has more than one correct response now, and that is the change. A container holds the title. A company controls the container. Shareholders own the company, and a family lives in it and calls it home. All four of those are true at the same time. None of them is a lie. That is what a long chain does. It does not hide the answer. It multiplies it until the answer stops being useful to the person standing in the kitchen. And there is one more thing I have to say, because this channel says the parts it cannot prove. The GAO looked at whether this ownership shift raises evictions, and it could not tell. The data was too limited and the definitions too inconsistent. That question is open. Anyone who tells you it is settled in either direction is ahead of the evidence. Next file. We found who holds the paper. We did not find who sets the number on it. Your rent is not decided by the entity on the deed, and, increasingly, it is not decided by a person either. It is decided by software, and by what that software knows about the building down the street.